Good day, AJ Mahari here. And again, if you get some value out of some content on this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Hit that subscribe button, the notification, hit all, and help this channel to be maybe, found a little bit more in the algorithm for other people that might benefit from the information here. So a person left a comment on a video I did. I think it's several years ago now. I don't know. Could be 7, could be 9, could be 10 years, could be, I don't know. And the video is called BPD Understanding versus Being Understood. It could be 14 years old. I don't know. Just saying. And the commenter says, so BPD Understanding versus being understood, which is a real issue for people with BPD, but not just people with BPD. Commenter says, I believe it's because borderlines have issues with emphasizing and relating. Oh, they did say emphasizing. Okay. I think they meant because borderlines have issues with empathizing and relating to others. Well, yes, they do, but in different ways. So do people with codependency, and not all people with codependency are the same. And the person says, as a non-borderline, I never had so many problems with misunderstandings with others than with my BPD ex. And yeah, I can hear you on that, because it was tremendously never-ending misunderstandings, in quotes, that aren't just misunderstandings, but yes, that too, with people with BPD, especially untreated. These relationships are just not possible, not healthy, not viable. And the commenter said, maybe it was not intentional misunderstanding on the part of the borderline, but that's how it felt to me on the other side. I was truly never understood. Well, see, this is interesting because I totally hear this commenter. You can be totally never understood by a person with BPD, no matter how long you think you love them, no matter how much you give to them, no matter how much care you give and rescue and trying to fix and people pleasing, etc. And they just take, and you give, and give some more. So I can hear this person saying, it's a woman, by the way, that they never really felt understood by the person with BPD. And then commenter goes on to say, I tried my hardest to understand him. Had to find my place. I figured out he had BPD and ushered him into therapy. I read books on it, studied into it, watched hours of videos on BPD, and I've concluded that they live in a delusion. This is interesting because this woman talks about all the study, all the videos, getting the person into therapy, the male borderline, and lots of people are doing this, right? I talk to clients every day and have new clients and clients I've been working with for some time now, that everybody's read everything they can. People are now trying to use, I meant to mention this somewhere, trying to use ChatGPT as a therapist. Not a good idea. I mean, it makes mistakes, but probably it helps in explaining some things, People are using it like wildfire right now. But the thing about that is, the more you try to understand them, the more you're actually continuing to keep yourself in a place of what this commenter said, which is never being understood yourself. And you can understand them to the nines, potentially, right? Depending how many books you read, etc. If you come to the correct information type conclusions about BPD, etc., which many don't. But even in that, how's that going to help you? Because you need to be spending that time understanding what just happened to you, how'd you get there, and why are you hurting so badly, right? Why were you never understood? Rather than focusing so much on borderline this, that, and everything, although I know a lot of people have got to educate themselves on it and want to know as much as possible, but don't forget, don't let that get to the stage where it's just codependent, running away from your own pain and healing that you need to do. And so this person studied it, read books, hours of videos on BPD, and they have made an erroneous conclusion, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. She says, I concluded that they live in a delusion. That's not true. That's not really how you could sum up all kinds of study and books and videos on BPD. that, oh, well, they just live in a delusion, so they're never going to understand you. And of course, they never feel understood. But why people with BPD never feel understood has nothing to do with the people in their lives right now trying so hard to understand them. And the commenter continues, so she concluded that people with BPD just live in a delusion, which is not accurate, okay? This is why you're never understood. No, it's not. They reject reality. No, not necessarily. I mean, when triggered and in certain circumstances of trying to relate and be close and with fear of abandonment and the approach avoidance conflict in BPD, yeah, well, they might seem like they're rejecting reality. They have those alloplastic, ego-syntonic defenses. And so, yeah, they're not 100% reality when they're relating to people. But when they're generally tested, people with BPD are, reality testing generally falls within average normal scores. So point is, they don't just reject reality, but there are parts of reality that when they're triggered and the emotional dysregulation and everything, yeah, they're not fully on top of all reality, but they're not totally out of reality. And then how that happens and why that happens is not always what this commenter goes on to say next. Commenter says transient psychosis would be the term used by many psychologists. No, it really wouldn't be if they knew what they were talking about. Because transient psychosis or transient paranoia is, I believe, related to trait number 9, and not even all people with BPD have that. So, and when they do have transient psychosis, it's fleeting and temporary. Well, I shouldn't say fleeting, but it's temporary. They don't stay in that state. That doesn't rule everything about what's going on for them. And if it's way more prevalent than that, it's not just borderline personality disorder. And but it's really transient when the delusion is what they hold on to. Is it really transient when it's a delusion they hold on to constantly? They don't hold on to the delusion or the misunderstanding or the lack of ability to be aware of what's happening between them and someone else. That quote reality unquote, if they have a sense of it to one degree or another, well, they're not holding on to anything delusional or psychotic for very long. So a certain short period of time, hours to maybe a day kind of thing. But after that, you're not describing borderline personality disorder anymore. You're describing maybe somebody with BPD who has also like paranoid personality disorder or who has something else which would account for psychosis, like a psychotic disorder, which is not the predominant trait or feature or symptoms of borderline personality disorder. So is it really transient when the delusion is what they hold on to constantly? Well, they don't, like I said. And so, yeah, it is in BPD symptomology transient. But if it's not transient in the person that you were with BPD, they may well, like I said, have a psychotic disorder comorbidity. But again, you can't be diagnosing people, because you were with them. And it reminds me of the line by Carl Jung. This is interesting. Quote, "There's no coming to consciousness without pain." Very, very true. I found in my life and in working with people, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, end quote. Yes. And so, commenter, with all due respect, what are you doing right now to face your pain instead of keep classifying and talking about this person with BPD and what they did or what they didn't do and how you've now decided that they have this psychosis that they always have. And maybe if they do, and you're right about that, well, that's not BPD. That's something more than BPD. And it's interesting because that Jung quote is interesting as well, because People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light or dwelling on the borderline in what they do or don't do or how nuts they are or not, whatever, just in a general parlance, but by making darkness conscious. Yeah. And how many people out there with codependency aren't making their own darkness conscious? You're still running around villainizing, trying to figure out, writing about the borderline everywhere, and how they did this, that, and the other thing, and they're so, like they're BPD, NPD, so says people that aren't psychologists or whatever. And you're diagnosing them, and in this case, she's like, he's totally psychotic, and he just lives out of reality, period. And how can that be transient if it's constant? Well, if it's constant, it's, like I said, something other than borderline personality disorder. But what is this person doing to face their own soul and their own pain by talking all the time and focusing on the borderline and the fact that you were never understood by the borderline? Not going to be understood by somebody who can't understand themselves. So anyway, and the Jungian quote applies to all people, not just people with BPD and not just people with codependency who continue to villainize the borderline as probably the borderline villainized you. But what are you doing? Because you're still abandoning yourself. You're coming to erroneous conclusions, this commenter, about BPD, as do many people. But it's whatever you experience, it's whatever you read lately, it's whatever makes most sense to you. And, with all due respect to the commenter, you were with a male borderline. You're probably right about that. And if, like I said, if they had all this psychosis and breaks with reality going on way more than transiently, then they also have, a psychotic disorder. And people with BPD, some people may have a psychotic disorder, and many people with BPD do not. And so, but the Jungian quote that you left just sort of made the comment for me because, no offense to the commenter, but that quote is true for people with codependency as well. And people that are still wanting to know so much more about the borderline, still focused on the borderline, still trying to say the borderline this is, the psychosis, the whatever. And you might be right about something, you might be wrong, but you're not categorizing that correctly. But then again, I don't take it that when you dated this male borderline that you got your PhD in psychology. Just saying. There's too much of this. I know what's going on with this person. Not only do they have BPD, but they have all this other stuff. And therefore, all people with BPD must just be psychotic. What? No. And the Jungian quote applies to every single person alive, not just people with BPD. And so I would say again, if you're someone out there with codependency, and you're trying to understand borderline personality disorder, fair enough, but are you overdoing it yet? What do you think? Because if you're overdoing it, then you're underdoing what you need to be doing for you, which is facing your own pain. Like the Jungian quote alludes to, face your own soul. And you're not going to become more enlightened as a codependent about what happened to that person with BPD and why, as this commenter says, never understood by the person with BPD, which I hear you on that. But you're not going to become enlightened by imagining figures of light, trying to figure out BPD or whatever, but by making the darkness conscious. And the darkness in this case, for people who have been with people with BPD, whether they have darkness going on, right, or not, is your codependency, and you're avoiding your own pain, and you're avoiding your own responsibility, though you might not have known what BPD was, for your part of not leaving when you were getting hurt in the beginning, right? That was your choice. That's people with codependency's responsibility. I'm not saying, it's easy to leave or break a trauma bond, but the Jungian quote would apply equally to people with codependency as anybody with BPD. Seek your own healing and treatment and stop reading about everybody else's problems, especially borderlines, because what about you and the issues that you now have? What about, and I'm going to have some information coming soon, whether in podcast or video, I don't know, about the impact of staying with borderlines when you know that they're destroying you and they don't understand you, etc., to say the least. And what's that doing to your nervous system? You're not only getting hit in your wallet probably in these relationships, you're not only getting hit emotionally, You're not only maybe getting hit literally, you're getting hit like in the soul. You're getting diminished, demeaned. You're losing yourself trying to rescue this person because, I mean, these patterns of codependency, they happen in people's lives for different reasons and from childhood. But the bottom line about that is it's self-avoidant, it's self-abandoning. And so that Jungian code applies really heavily to people with codependency too. So whatever you do now, start taking care of you, take better care of you, try to change your focus, get into a healing recovery process. I'm out here to work with people who resonate with me, and learn. People have to learn with codependency how to stop the focus on other to try to like explain and much more, your experience, and to try to sort of make it make sense, when essentially it will make some sense when you do the healing recovery process with someone. Like, I just know how I work with clients. But to make it make sense isn't to focus on the borderline. And people with codependency, it's time, if you haven't yet, stop abandoning yourself in the quest for everything, to know everything about the borderline, because then you're not illuminating the darkness in your consciousness that you need to, right now, shed light on, be enlightened about, and find out more about, so you can heal and break the trauma bond. Take care.